show that you've heard about. Unless you're listening to this for the first time. Oh, this is my show. Edwin Salmon of Knowledge is the name of the show. You might have accidentally clicked on it. Oh, this is my show. Edwin Salmon of Knowledge is the name of the show. And you might get some knowledge sometimes. You might get a take. It's so bloody hot, it burns your ears. You have to put it on the internet's windowsill. You let it cool down and you shove it in your ears. And you say that's a nice cool take, a lukewarm take. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, it's just right. I'm Goldilocks and I'm listening to a podcast. This is what I like. Edwin Salmon of Knowledge. Edwin Salmon of Knowledge is the podcast. Hey, Salmon Skins, and welcome to another episode of Edwin Salmon of Knowledge podcast. I'm Edwin Salmon. You might get some knowledge. Here's some knowledge straight away about the podcast. You may have seen on the Instagram stories if you follow me on Instagram. If you don't, then you don't. I'm aware that there's more than the 2,000 and so people that follow me on Instagram. In fact, the whole online thing it's not my dominion. My dominion is in the live arena. I nearly said realm, but then I sound like Doctor Strange. And I'm not Doctor Strange. I'm Edwin Salmon. So, my podcast has been going since kind of the beginning of lockdown. It started because I reckon psychologically I needed to talk to someone. As in, my stand-up is a sort of a form of therapy in that I have these stupid thoughts, or what I think are stupid thoughts, but they're actually funny thoughts, and I don't get to share them with people. It's like I haven't been sitting around writing jokes during this entire lockdown pandemic situation because I can't try those jokes out. I can maybe try them out on Cara. I mean, I know I have like comedy friends, but they're insecure about their own jokes and their own quality of comedy. And it's not something that can be done really, except in front of an audience. You got to try stuff out. It's like, I think this is funny, but I want to know exactly what's funny about it. And then in the moment, you might just think of something that makes it just sing a little bit more, fly a little bit more. I'm kind of sounding a bit wanky now. But look, other people have called it an art form. And sure, I'm going to call it an art form. I get into kind of details about this in my book, which you can read the first draft of, or at least of what I've written, which is nearly 40,000 words at this stage. And most of it, if not all of it, no, not all of it, most of it is on my Patreon page, which is frozen at the moment because I've just been so busy with the little guy, with Luke, who just turned 3 months. It's been difficult to put stuff up, but I don't want to be promising things and then not delivering on them, because that is not a way to go. I mean, you're putting yourself under pressure by saying I'm going to have X, Y, and Z. I mean, I have a couple of videos that I wanted to put up on YouTube, kind of funny videos, sort of satirical videos, I guess you'd say, but I haven't had the chance to do it because none of these things make me any money. This podcast makes me an incremental amount of money, but I don't have a huge following. I don't have hundreds of thousands or even tens of thousands. My followers and numbers are in the single thousands. But luckily, I'm good at doing live stand-up. But unfortunately, live stand-up hasn't been a thing for quite some time. Now, I have been doing some shows. We did Shawshank Redemption Dream Gun Film Reads in Kilkenny, and then I did a little support gig of 20-25 minutes for Kevin McGarren in Limerick, which is why I don't have the ukulele anymore, which is why I've made up that song using guitar and my mouth for percussion. Trying to be like Reggie Watts, one of my favorite improvisers, comedians, people. I don't know. Like I wouldn't call him an improviser. He's more of a vibe wizard. That's would be my official title for Reggie if I was put on the spot and asked, "What do you think of Reggie Watts?" I think he's a vibe wizard. That'd be a cool name for a show. You can have that one, Reggie, if you're listening. He probably isn't. I interviewed him once, but he doesn't remember me. Kevin McGarren interviewed him as well. He's been interviewed by quite a lot of Irish comedians. Those two, that's the only me and Kevin. I hear Luke crying in the background. And see, this is the thing. I don't know if you're going to pick him up, but if you pick him up, crying in the background, just, this is what having a baby is all about. Crying and poop and smiles. I mean, he's starting to smile now. I'm kind of looking forward to him moving a bit more and being a bit more independent and a little less needy. He is a little bit needy right now, but then he's a baby. So, he needs to be changed and he needs to be sung at when he's being changed. But I did talk about Luke in Edinburgh. I've just been to Edinburgh, which is why there was no show on Friday. Now, I had planned on doing a show and setting it up to drop on Friday morning, like a Rihanna album. New episode drops. I think I'll call this episode Vibe Wizards. Vibe Wizards in the Scottish mists of comedy time. There, I've said the name of the episode within the episode, which is one of those pleasing things. Like in a movie, I love a movie where they say the title of the movie in the movie. It's just one of those things where if they can squeeze it in there, they may as well. They're professional screenwriters. They got to get, well, I guess this court case is going to be Kramer versus Kramer. Very timely reference there to a movie I haven't seen. So, I was in Edinburgh doing some gigs, or I was asked to do some gigs by Stephen Colfer, who is the Dream Gun boss, I guess. He writes the show with James and Gavin and my good friends Hannah Mamalis, who some of you may know is the co-host of Reviewables, which is on extended hiatus, and Ronan Carey. And Stephen and myself all went to Edinburgh to do some shows in Georgia Square in the Underbelly Theatre, which is a 400-seater, but there wasn't that many people around. And it was kind of nice. If you've ever been to the Edinburgh Festival, when it's at full whack, when it's a full tilt festival, there's hundreds of venues and there's a show on kind of like every hour, on the hour from 9 o'clock in the morning till midnight. It's insane. There's an insane amount of flyering going on. There's people thrusting flyers into your face, willy and indeed nilly. Pro and Nilly got an awful lot of flyers. But there wasn't that this time. There was very few. I think there was maybe 3 flyerers, because you can't really flyer in a time of COVID. Flyering in the time of COVID. A romance novel. Because people don't want to be approached by strangers who are breathing on them and handing them things that they've touched. It's all about the touching and the no touching. So we weren't flyering at all. We were doing 6 shows in 4 days. We did 2 matinee shows of The Lion King and Harry Potter. 4 kids. Well, suitable for kids, not actually for kids, because we weren't dressed up. We were just standing in our regular clothes, reading it like it was, it looks like a radio play, even though very small kids wouldn't know what a radio play is. And actually some of their parents probably wouldn't know what a performed radio play is. But it was really good fun, and I so enjoyed it so much. And I also bumped into another comedian, a couple other Irish comedians, and there was a compilation show on in a place called the Beehive upstairs in an actual room with like 70 people doing stand-up. So I did that gig every night. So I ended up doing 10 gigs in 4 days, and it was wonderful. And my comedy brain got like switched on to the point where on the last night, the comedian who was on before me was talking about mobile phones and how he broke his phone. He put it in a microwave. It got wet. Basically, he stopped drinking because he broke his phone by getting it wet, getting it covered in alcohol, which is a wet substance. He wasn't drinking whipped alcohol or dried, freeze-dried alcohol. He was drinking it wet, the way God intended it. And he was so drunk that he put his phone in the microwave for like a couple of seconds. He figured, it'd be fine, just put it in for a couple of seconds and then it'll be dry. But of course he melted his phone, because that's what microwaves do. They melt your food and make it good to eat, but they also can melt your mobile phones. Little tip for you: don't put your mobile phone in the microwave. But my joke was, I had this joke and I was like, mobile phone in the microwave. Oh yeah, what's that thing where I have a joke where I say, put your phone in a glass of water and put it in a microwave and then crush it, smash it with a hammer, put it in a bag, give it to a man on a horse. He goes to the coast, gives it to a man on a boat. He travels out to sea. I was like, what the hell was that? And I was trying to think of it, and then I couldn't think of any other bits, and I had to go up and do 15, 20 minutes of a set, and I was like, what is that bit? And then I finally remembered it and was like, yes. It was like a dormant part of my brain, like quite literally a dormant part of my brain hadn't been used, and then suddenly it was active again, and it was trying to remember bits that I hadn't done, because a lot of jokes I don't write down. I'm just, you're just doing certain bits, and you might write down a line that reminds you of the whole bit. So I kind of went, maybe I should start writing stuff down again. But in the course of remembering it, I'll never forget it again, because someone was talking about Tinder, and weirdly enough, I think that was the day. It was the 28th of August, which was it was 2 years since I came back from Edinburgh. And I think a couple of days after I came back from Edinburgh, I matched with Cara on Tinder. Now, we don't tell people, I've just said it now, obviously, but we don't say that we met on Tinder, because we didn't technically meet on Tinder. We met in real life because it was set up by Cara's cousin for us to meet. I was going to an event and I'd mentioned it on social media, and then she ended up bringing Cara along to the same event. Very, very sly. But it was 2 years. It was 2 years since we met, and now look at us with a little beautiful squish. And my joke was basically, I was talking about Tinder and saying, I know what Tinder is, and said Ireland's such a small country that sometimes you're going to come across, your ex, and you might just out of muscle memory swipe right, and it's embarrassing, and but you just have to calm down, relax, and all you do in that instance is just, you get your phone, you put it in a glass of water, you put it in the microwave, you put it on for a minute, it comes out slightly melted, you smash it with a hammer, you put it in a bag, and all that sort of stuff. So it's kind of a misdirect, and that you think I'm going to be telling you what kind of message to write to your ex if you accidentally swipe right. But no, I was making a funny joke. So I'll tell you about the best and worst audience members that I encountered this year at Edinburgh Festival after this tiny commercial break. So, guys, we are back. Thank you so much for listening to whatever those people were trying to sell you. So, Edinburgh, yes, it was lovely being there. It was lovely because it was so quiet. It was nice not to be there for 28 days and to have to do all the shows. And, just the fatigue of doing all those shows and doing extra shows if you're doing stand up shows. Like the last time I was there 2 years ago for the full run, I lost my voice at one point towards the end, just because you're kind of just running on empty, and it's a kind of a constant. You're in a constant loop. You're stuck in a loop. We even got to go see a show, which I didn't really have the energy or time to do the last time. Well, I saw Eleanor Tiernan's show 2 years ago, because I'm a big fan of Eleanor, and she's always in the same venue at the same time, and that's a very clever move. Any potential comedians out there, if you can get the same venue and the same time every year, then people know where to go, and they don't have to think about where is it on this year. They'll just go there, and if you build it, they will come. But it's not about ghostly baseball men. It's about comedy people. So we went to see Sam Campbell, who is an Australian comedian that some of the lads in Dreamgun had seen him perform 2 years ago. And we saw it in the Monkey Barrel Comedy Club. And, everyone's vaccinated and everyone's in pods of 2s and 4s. Bubbles, pods, whatever you want to call them. Domes is another word that nobody uses that. But like, we're in a small room, underground, indoors, and in front of us actually were two brothers, kind of in their late 40s, and one of them was wearing a mask, and the other one was not wearing a mask, which seemed to me to be a little strange, because if one of them was either worried about getting COVID or thought that they had COVID, why would they be wearing a mask? Because you're just going to be hanging out with your brother anyway. And if he's not wearing a mask and you are, he's going to get potentially COVID. But look, nobody got COVID. Or maybe we did. Maybe everyone has it. But that's the whole point of everyone being vaccinated, so that if you do get it, it's not going to affect you as badly as it would if you're definitely not going to be hospitalized. And it's nice to see that Ireland has a large percentage of the population has gotten the vaccine. I'm not going to talk about COVIDiots or any of that kind of stuff. I'm just going to say I have the vaccine. Everyone I know has gotten the vaccine. No one's Wi-Fi has improved. Just everyone's making that bad joke. And also nobody has died or had any sort of long-term effects. I've only known a few people who've actually felt kind of exhausted after it. I felt fine, just a little pain in the arm. But it's just, it goes to show how far conspiracy theories have come and how badly misinformation has affected people, that, for once the government is actually giving you something for free that can potentially save your life and the lives of other people around you, and people are rejecting it and, taking horse medicine or drinking bleach or whatever the stupid people are telling them to. Now, you may call me a sheep, but or sheeple, part of the sheeple, but that's the other thing as well. And I heard Bill Burr saying this, who is someone who always kind of is a straight shooter and says it very plainly. And he was like, I don't understand why people think that the government is trying to kill them all, because who is going to vote for them? If they get rid of all the sheeple, who's left? And that's absolutely true. They need us to vote them in again, even though they're completely inept at the whole thing. But look, restrictions are going to be lifted completely on October 22nd. I think we do need to move to a point where we can live with COVID and other pandemic events that happen or will happen over the next number of years. This just seems to be the way that the world is now. You know, hey, look, it's still on fire and it's still melting. So there's that. So maybe we can get back to concentrating on that. Every time it seems that we're going to kind of finally tackle climate change and the environmental issues that are happening, a fucking pandemic happens or a financial crash happens, and it just diverts attention away from everything. But look, I'm not going to get political. I'm just going to say it was nice to be in a room for an hour laughing with someone and at someone who was quite funny. And then I got to do some gigs, and I had ran quite the gamut when it came to audiences, because the late night show was at 11 p.m. and it finished around midnight or sometimes a little bit after midnight. And on the second to last night, there was a Gimp in the audience. Now, I walked into the venue, with my mask on, and there was a guy dressed like a Gimp. Now, if you've seen Pulp Fiction, that's what my reference is, a movie. There might be some of you out there who've been to sort of S&M clubs or who are into S&M or who have legitimately been a Gimp. If you are a Gimp who's been affected by any of these stories, please call the Gimp hotline on 1-800-GIMP. That's 1-800-GIMP. We're here to listen to your gimping stories. But no, there was a guy dressed in leather. It's like a leather zippy kind of thing. And I just immediately went, "Oh, bring out the Gimp." And I said, I've heard of mask wearing, but this is too much. No, I didn't say that. And then I didn't realize that he was part of the audience, and he was sitting in the front row when the MC started the gig, still wearing the thing and wearing the leather kind of mask. Not helmet. He was wearing the leather mask. And he eventually took it off. After the first act, he took off his mask and he looked fucking awful. He looked like he had jaundice, but he was just very, very drunk. And his friends were all sitting alongside him, and they're all like wearing normal clothes. Like, I've been to stags where there's been a theme, and the theme has been, sometimes something simple like, let's all wear Hawaiian shirts. That's the theme of the stag. But I think in England, and I'm not going to say that these guys were just, because we were chatting to some of them afterwards, and they were like genuinely nice lads, but they really duped their friend. They were like, the theme of the stag is, you're a Gimp, and we're all your doms. You're the sub, and we're the doms. Or maybe he was told, yeah, we're all going to dress in Gimp costumes. And then he shows up and he's like, you fucking bastards, you all said you were going to be wearing Gimp costumes. Oh, I'm so sweaty. So he was sitting in the front row, and I tried to talk to him a little bit. Not really. I was kind of just sort of gently making fun of him, as other people were throughout the night. And then I did like 15 minutes. I think I was supposed to do 10. And I did 15, and I was like, all right, I better kind of wrap this up. And I said that and sort of looked down at him, and he had the mask off, and I kind of really looked at him for the first time and looked at how goddamn fucking wrecked he looked. And I said, I better hurry up because this Gimp is about to bloody die. And then he threw up into his little plastic pint glass. Well, it's not a glass, it's plastic pint cup, because, that's what they're serving you at the bar, I guess, because it's a festival. And it's easier to dispose of those things. I just hope they put them in the green bin. So he got sick into his pint, his empty plastic pint cup. But I didn't actually see this because he was kind of sitting in the dark, so I didn't really know. or else I just chose not to look. So that was something. I've never had a man in a gimp costume vomit at the end of my gig, but at least he did it kind of very discreetly. I mean, I've seen lads in Dublin walk along the street, and without slowing down, without like missing a beat or changing their gait or stride, they've like turned their head as if they're politely coughing and just sort of done a little vomit, a little projectile vom onto the road or onto the path, and then they just keep walking. They don't even stop to vomit. So, you know, I've seen it all when it comes to vomit. You name it, and I've seen it. And then we had a Dream Gun. We did 2 early shows that were kid-friendly, but not specifically for kids. You know, there were a lot of jokes in there kids wouldn't get. They were laughing at some of the kind of fart jokes, and I played Pumbaa. One of the characters I played was Pumbaa the warthog from The Lion King, who talks like this, and his whole backstory is he has smelly farts, and he was at the water hole, and no one could stand his smelly farts, so he had no friends, so he had to make friends with a meerkat. And that's my entire backstory. Now, you can listen to the actual episode, The Lion King. All Dream Gun Film Reads are available as podcast episodes wherever you get your good podcasts. And in fact, if you're in London and you're listening to this, next weekend, the Dream Gun gang are doing Shawshank Redemption and an early kids show of The Lion King at a festival that I can't remember the name of. But if you look up Dream Gun Film Reads online, that will have all the information. They're also doing the Breakfast Club for the Dublin Fringe at the end of September. So all of those tickets are available online. So we were doing the Lion King show, and there's kids out there, you know, some of them are very young. And in the very front row, there was a 2-month-old. Sorry, there was a 2-year-old. There was also around a 2-month-old kid who at one stage got a little bit fussy, as kids do. You could probably hear Luke earlier on in the background. Once again, Luke is not being ignored by me. Well, he's been taken care of by his mother. I'm not willfully ignoring him. I'm doing a podcast. So, you know, actually someone, wait, no, I'll get back to that. I'll in my head, I'm going, no, you're going off topic here. Well, it's on topic. It's baby stuff. But listen, I'll talk about this baby. So the baby was getting a bit fussy in the front row of the venue, and the dad like took him up for like a little walk and was like walking around the back, still watching the show. And then he came back and he was still a bit fussy. So there's only 3 things you can do. You can only walk around with them, chat to them. You can change their nappy, and I don't think that was going to happen like on the floor. Or you can give them a feed. So the mother started breastfeeding the baby in the front row. So I think that really does cover the full spectrum of the sort of front row audience members you're going to get. A 2-month-old breastfeeding baby and a 30-something-year-old groom-to-be wearing a gimp suit vomiting into a cup. And that's Edinburgh. So, guys, what I was saying there, I was about babies. I was trying out some baby material, which I was a little bit hesitant to do. And when I said it on the first night, I said, so I recently had a baby. And a few people were like, hey. And a few other people were like, oh. And then this one woman who was, I guess, in her sort of mid-20s, she said, well, you didn't have a baby. And I went, well, yeah, I know. And then I kind of jokingly said, it's a little bit late for me to learn about the birds and the bees now. That horse has already left the stables. That train has pulled into the tunnel, if you know what I mean. Wink, wink, sexy times. You know, I just got a little bit... it kind of annoys me a little bit when a woman will say that, when just because I didn't say so. My partner recently had a baby because because she's a woman. Or like we had a baby. It's like, oh, we. It's just easier to say that. I mean, we did make the baby together. I was part of it. I did plant the seed, and yeah, fair enough. I planted the seed quite happily, and then walked away for the guts of 9 months. But I supported her. But in the end, she had the baby, and I made a joke, which I thought was a little bit off color, but at the same time, I thought it was justified in the context of the show, where I just kind of sarcastically said, well, actually, that's where you're wrong. I am the first man to have a baby naturally. He came out my dick hole, and he's here now, and it was incredibly painful, and now my dick is ruined, and when I go for a slash, I have to do it in a bathtub, because just the spray is way too wide. And I got a big laugh because it's so extreme and out there. But just this whole, you're not being, you're not being a feminist by pointing out that a man can't have a baby. I'm well fucking aware of it. It's just such a sort of I don't know, just like, all right, okay, yes, we hear you, well done. You got one up on the straight white male comedian. And look, we deserve it. So another thing that I noticed before I left, now it was difficult being away from Luke for 4 days. Karen, not so much. I know, I'm joking. I really did miss them, and on the last night when I did my Sunday night gig, because here's the thing, I was all alone on the Sunday night in the city, which was quite quiet because it was the last day of the festival, and the festival had been running and people were doing kind of weeks. There was a few people doing like full runs, but they weren't around, and I had to get up very early, so I stayed in a hostel on the last night because I knew I'd only be sleeping for like 4 or 5 hours before I'd have to get up super early to get my super early flight, which wasn't super early, but early enough. And because when I was asked to do it, and I said, "Oh, sure, yeah," and then I booked my flights, and then I had to check in with Ryanair, and they asked for my passport number, and when I opened my passport, I realized that it was out of date, that my passport expired on the 7th of August 2021. And guys, that is a couple of weeks ago, 4 weeks ago almost. And my heart kind of dropped. I was like, oh, fuck. But then I realized that we were flying out with Aer Lingus and flying back with Ryanair. So when I checked online, Aer Lingus, you can fly with, like a driver's license, which I don't have, or you can fly with a public services card, which I do have. So I ended up ringing Aer Lingus, ringing a representative and saying, is this true? Because I didn't want to get to the airport, go through all that, get to the gate, and then they don't let me on the flight. And he said, yes, that's true, sir. You can fly with your public services card. So I flew without a passport. And on the way back, flying with Aer Lingus in the Edinburgh airport, because you obviously have to show your COVID vaccine certificate, which I had printed on paper, and I had a screenshot of it on my phone. I also brought my actual birth cert, like a 44-year-old document that I carried around me, like some kind of ancient scroll, in case someone needed proof that I was Irish. When I showed my vaccine passport, the lady at the gate called over to her co-worker, was like, "Josh, is this what we're supposed to be asking for?" And then she turned to me, she's like, "Sorry, I've never done this before." And in my head I was going, what? We're nearly 2 years into a fucking pandemic here, and you've never done this before? Is this your first day in the job? These are things I thought, but I didn't say. I just was like, haha. And I got on the plane and came home. So I will have my new passport with a pretty awful picture. But they're all awful. But at least it's, current. At least I look older. And it's in black and white. So my grey hairs won't look as prominent. But what I have now is, let me just grab this here. Something I'd like to read for you. I'd like to read you a couple of things at the end of this podcast. Now, if you've been listening this long and you've been looking for Baby Detective will be in the next episode, which will be out on Friday or Saturday. I'm not too sure. If I record it tomorrow, it'll be out Friday, but if I don't, it'll be out Saturday. I'm going to be going on the Jennifer Zamparelli show on Friday morning on 2FM if you want to listen in there. And then I'll tell you for sure when the episode is going out. But Cara, who is a wonderful mother and is absolutely 100% committed to Luke's development and well-being, she'll have him speaking 12 languages and reading and cycling a bike when he's 9 months old. And there he is crying in the background. It is, as I record this, it is getting late enough. It's his kind of witching hour. So if I do, when I do finish this, I'll probably bring him for a little walk around in the Bjorn, because that kind of calms him down and gets him to sleep. But look, we're very lucky that he does sleep for like 6 hours, sometimes 7 hours. Although he did wake up in the middle of the night last night, and I slept through it. So, yeah. So Cara got these books because she's like, if you sing to the kid, and I sing to him all the time, I sing stupid little songs. If you go on my Instagram, you'll see an example of me singing a silly, silly song. So this is a book of classic stories for kids. So I picked one randomly to read to him, just so, just for something to read. He obviously can't understand the nuances and the context of these stories, but at the same time, he likes the sound of my voice because I'm his dad. And, if you're listening to my podcast and you've listened to 80 odd episodes, and people have told me that I have a nice, soothing voice. So this is called Teeny Tiny, an English folktale. And I was shocked at this, no spoilers, just I'll tell you, it is a little bit shocking that this is, and obviously folktales are old, long ago, and you kind of wouldn't get away with this these days. You'd get cancelled if you tried to write a children's story that went like this. Once upon a time, there lived a teeny tiny old woman. She lived in a teeny tiny house in a teeny tiny street with a teeny tiny cat. Now, you can see, I'll just interject as we go along here, you can see a pattern forming. I think everything in this story is going to be teeny tiny, but will everything being teeny tiny make it cutesy wootsy, or will it be strangey wangey? Let's see, let's read on. One day, the teeny tiny woman decided to go out for a teeny tiny walk. She put on her teeny tiny boots and her teeny tiny bonnet, and off she went. When she had walked a teeny tiny way down the teeny tiny street, she went through a teeny tiny gate into a teeny tiny graveyard, which was a teeny tiny shortcut to the teeny tiny meadow. Okay, so she's in a graveyard, but it's a teeny tiny one, so it's cute. Well, she had only taken a few teeny tiny steps when she saw a teeny tiny bone lying on top of a teeny tiny grave. Right. She thought that would do very well to make some teeny tiny soup for supper, so she put the teeny tiny bone in her teeny tiny pocket and went home at once to her teeny tiny house. Like, teeny tiny being thrown in there doesn't, to me, detract from the fact that a woman walking through a graveyard saw a bone on a grave, which is obviously a human bone, and she said, do you know what I'll do with that bone? I'll make soup out of it. Like, come on. This is for kids. It continues. Now, the teeny tiny woman was tired when she reached her teeny tiny house. so she did not make the teeny tiny soup immediately, but put the teeny tiny bone into her teeny tiny cupboard. Okay. Then she sat in her teeny tiny chair and put her teeny tiny feet up and had a teeny tiny sleep. We call them micro naps now. Would we call a micro woman? Probably not. But she had only been asleep a teeny tiny time, 2 seconds maybe, when she woke up at the sound of a teeny tiny voice coming from her teeny tiny cupboard. The teeny tiny voice said, "Where is my teeny tiny bone?" Well, the teeny tiny woman was a teeny tiny bit frightened, so she wrapped her teeny tiny shawl around her teeny tiny head and went to sleep again. See, that's the sort of child's way of dealing with stuff. Remember when I was a kid and I'd be asleep in my teeny tiny bed and you'd hear like a weird noise and I think it was, maybe it's burglars or worse, burgling murderers. They'll steal the house and then our lives. But instead of informing my father, I was just too scared. So I'd go to sleep. If I go to sleep, then I'll wake up and it'll be morning and all of this will be over. But that's just, if it was actual burgling murderers, that would be a terrible, terrible way to deal with it. It's a miracle I'm still alive. So the woman went to sleep when she heard a voice asking for a bone. I mean, look, it could be a talking dog, a teeny tiny talking dog, but let's read on and find out. She had only been asleep a teeny tiny time again when the teeny tiny voice came from the teeny tiny cupboard once more, a teeny tiny bit louder this time. "Where is my teeny tiny bone?" The teeny tiny woman was a teeny tiny bit more frightened than last time, so she hid under the teeny tiny cushions. But she could not go back to sleep, not even a teeny tiny bit, because she's fucking terrified. Then the teeny tiny voice came again, and this time it was even a teeny tiny bit louder. "Where is my teeny tiny bone?" This time the teeny tiny woman sat up in her teeny tiny chair and said in her loudest teeny tiny voice, "Take it!" There was a teeny tiny silence, and then a teeny tiny ghost ran out of the teeny tiny house, down the teeny tiny street, through the teeny tiny gate, into the teeny tiny graveyard, with the teeny tiny bone clutched very tightly in its teeny tiny hand. And the teeny tiny woman never took even a teeny tiny walk there ever again. Well, good night, kids. That's a story about an old woman who robs bones from a graveyard to make soup out of them. A cannibal old lady. And also, why was the ghost looking for a physical bone? If it was a ghost bone, how did the old lady grab it in the first place? And then, if it wasn't a ghost bone, is the ghost a grave robber or a bone collector? Who is Denzel Washington? That's what I want to know. So, that's a reading from an old folk tale. And that, I literally picked the book. The book is quite big. And it's got, how many pages has it got? It's 500 pages. Plus. It's myths and legends. And it's all kind of weird stuff. A lot of this kid stuff is kind of frightening. And I don't know why. I'll do an investigation into it, and that will be the basis of my new podcast. So guys, this is the end of this episode. I will have a new episode out soon with the season finale of Baby Detective. I think there've only been 3 or 4 episodes so far. I'll also have a reading from my own book in the next episode. And I'm going to do an investigation into some of these myths, these children's myths and stories and fables, and see where they come from. If you enjoyed this episode, thank you so much for listening. If you want to give me a review, that would be wonderful. You can do it on Apple Podcasts. I don't know if you can do it on any other things. I've never reviewed myself. That would be inelegant. So please do take care of yourselves and each other. Be kind, be sound, and I'll be seeing you and you'll be hearing me very soon. Bye. See you later now. Bye.